Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Great to be here. I really love this facility. It's really nice. First time I'm here. It's pretty amazing. We have Allison, Alan, and Dawn here with us today. These guys are, I was getting to talk to them. I wanted to catch up with Dawn before she got here, but we'll have to hear from her before we get going. So I'm going to turn it over to each of our inventors, entrepreneurs, let them introduce themselves, give a quick little rundown of who they are and what they're up to.
Testing. All right. I'm Allison Denby. I'm from a rural area in Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, and created a globally sold game from a small little community. And it's called Watch Your Mouth. It was #1 on 3 platforms on Amazon back in 16, 17, 18. It won the Toy of the Year award in Australia in 2017. And we've expanded our family of games and all completed from a small little town.
Alan?
Excuse me, I'm Alan Guyan, founder and CEO of Made Plus. We are a domestic active lifestyle footwear brand located in Annapolis, Maryland. We use recycled components to make footwear domestically. So basically our shoes I'm wearing are made from 6.5 water bottles. We basically position raw goods to make our components. So we use little finished goods. It's an on-demand manufacturing model. And we allow customization to happen during the process, which makes us a little bit different. So most of our positioning is bringing the raw goods and manipulate the raw goods. So it allows us to have a little bit more less waste approach for footwear. Oh, excuse me, I forgot one more thing. So we've been selling since last June. The business has been around about 3.5 years.
All right. Hi guys, my name is Dawn Myers, founder and CEO of a company called The Most Inc. We're actually a family of brands in the textured personal hair care space. What makes us differentiated in our space is that rather than producing liquid products, your gels, your curl creams, we actually produce appliances and tech-enabled hardware that makes the process of personal care, particularly for women of color, less onerous. We offer folks time savings and try to make that process as efficient as possible.
Very cool. I saw some of your products there, Dawn. Very nice. I was looking at them online. They look pretty high tech.
They're very cool. Thank you.
You know, a lot of times packaging is so important with products. It really is. But let's go over to Allison real quick. And we were talking earlier, and you have a lot of things going on with what you're doing now. Give a little bit of rundown on one of the companies and things that you've been doing that's really helping entrepreneurs in your area.
So many times when you've become an entrepreneur, you gradually become a serial entrepreneur. Things just become easier. You just expand your industries and expertise. And especially from a rural area in Shenandoah Valley, once you have grown a reputation, you become a source of those who are inquiring how to follow your steps. And so we created the Stanton Innovation Hub that is a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's an ecosystem that helps build you up and get you connected to the resources that you need. Almost every single business requires legal, accounting, marketing, digital marketing, HR, et cetera. So we have all of those services under one roof. And then we bring in programs, and we have what we call social hours. We find that you don't know what you don't know. So when you start those conversations and you create those forced serendipity moments, it's organic growth. And it doesn't have to be from one person. You just have to set the stage, and then it happens on its own. So now it's expanding to other locations up and down the valley. And it's a win-win situation for me being here because what Carmine does professionally actually will be helping me bridge that information to those who are in my area. And I'm looking forward to bringing that knowledge there.
Great. Awesome. And if anybody has any questions, raise your hand, come up and ask them. I work better with questions. I don't know about you guys. It's much easier. Yeah.
The second organization, it's the Stanton Innovation Hub. It's in Stanton, Virginia, the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. Another one is being created and opening up in Harrisonburg and Waynesboro and on. And it's just, it was just a huge success in Stanton. And we have partnerships usually with universities. So the Stanton one is in partnership with Mary Baldwin University. All of our anchor tenants give back to the mission of helping small businesses and entrepreneurs. So we have an organization that's similar to a small business development center that does micro lending. They offer one-on-one boot camps. All of those are housed in our building. And we're replicating that in other areas.
Cool. You have a question in the back?
I can speak to that if you'd like. It's not a myth, and it's not your imagination. There's definitely more funding, particularly for moonshots on the West Coast and in New York and in those kind of Class A cities. It can be a lot more difficult to find funding in an ecosystem like this one, and I know because I built my product in DC. And what I've found is that we have to take a different approach, right? You may not be able to find the $3 million you need for R&D and engineering in manufacturing right off the bat, but you may be able to get $100K in grants and get a revolving credit line and maybe get that early stage accelerator funding, right? And then from there, once you have your MVP, once you have traction, once you have sales, then you can go to venture and they'll start to take you seriously. But you're right, the onus is much higher here. The bar and the barrier to entry is much more difficult in this region.
I think I'll add to that too. So to answer your question about East versus West, what I've found to be very particular on the West Coast is there's several decades of former CEOs, former entrepreneurs who have started another company, another company, another company. And then what happens is you have this flux of, okay, the money needs to be there too. Those people need to be there because they're not moving. But I also would add Boston to the list as well. Boston is a fantastic hub, in my opinion. It's a little bit different than New York. And in some ways, you may get a better shake, in my opinion. Plus, you have all the top name colleges on the East Coast. And not to insult anybody from the West Coast, there's just a different work ethic from East to West and how culture is built for innovators in the West Coast versus the East Coast. So what we are seeing too, though, is the major universities like Stanford and MIT, these are just breeding entrepreneurs. I mean, literally pumping them out. And a lot of times what you'll see at rite of passage is they're going to stay in the Boston area or they're going to go all the way West Coast to try to fulfill their dream. So.
No doubt about it. And Dawn, I want to get into funding and the differences in a little while on between, and I don't want to start this conversation with male and female, the differences in the funding and something that we'll talk about. And I don't know if you guys realize the expertise that are on this stage. So if you do have some questions, super important to ask them now because I'm in awe of the things that they've done myself. So it's pretty amazing to have them and you guys be able to ask these questions. So if you don't have any questions, I want to go over to Alan. And Alan is not only an entrepreneur, but this guy is an inventor of some awesome products. And he chose to make his products here in the U.S., which is amazing to me. And he's making a few bucks doing it. And Alan, why don't you go through real quick, your choice of making the product here and maybe some of the barriers, if there were any, of making it here.
Well, we might need a longer session for that one.
That's why I said quick.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it quick and short and sweet and brutal. From a young age, I always was passionate about making products. 25 years of basically industrial design, of making really cool stuff for different levels of industries, from automotive to DoD, spy gadgets to footwear. Footwear kind of spoke to me in a lot of ways because it was the convergence of a lot of cool engineering and design, and then fashion, a fit function, a celebrity function, a sneaker culture function. Like all those things came with one product, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Oh, by the way, these products are made from textile and plastic and rubber and foam and has to serve the elements. So the engineering challenge became higher and higher and higher. But what I can tell you is that going overseas for probably 30 or 40 times in my career of just Asia alone, not including Europe and South America, but there's nothing significantly different of making it over there than here. We've just decided to push those products out, mainly because of labor wages and tax, unfortunately. So when you start weighing out the different things that make decisions for companies to overseas manufacturing, shipping kept coming up, in my opinion. Waste kept coming up in the problem-solving proposition. So my first goal was to make a footwear company that focuses around less waste, and then do ethically driven materials, on-demand manufacturing model, of course. All these things kind of chipped away at the erosion of overseas manufacturing. There's still one bit. Scale. How do you scale that? And then how do you build complexity into that and make money out of that? Well, it's still all to be determined, to be honest with you. But what is not undetermined is we took a 300-plus step process to make shoes. We make it under 50 steps. We drive local sourced yarns. We ship locally. We have shoe trucks. And, we changing the model of how footwear is made. And here's the best part: with a ton of less waste. By knitting our uppers, we're almost a one-to-one material consumption. Some 3D printing happening on our tooling side, on our heel counters, inserts, orthotics, which brings customization on board, biomechanics on board. So all these different things, it's possible. It's possible. Is it a wholesale model that every Dick's sporting goods store will have our shoes? Maybe not. And that may be okay too. But the main objective for us making it here outside of the waste piece was being able to control the supply chain. I really wanted to focus on having a vertical company. That way I could be agile enough to make something else. So the plus on the end of our brand is actually the extension of outside of footwear. Because we're making it, or we made it for you. So hope that answers most of the question.
Oh, very cool. Plus, he's wearing his shoes right now.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And we, by the way, we make pickleball shoes too for pickleball folks. And we have running coming out in the summer.
Go ahead, you have a question?
Yes.
Pickleball, we talking about that in the back. Everyone plays pickleball.
My question stems for doing the.
Test that. Okay, here we go.
That's an exclamation point.
My question, my question is from around getting the research and engineering for a product. If you're developing this product, finding the resource to do that and being able to fund it, that is, I guess, where we are now, and trying to figure out how to go about it. Would you have some suggestions around that?
What's your product, just out of curiosity?
We've created, I'm sorry? Well, I didn't want it to screech again. We're creating a bodysuit that helps you lose weight. However, the science has been around, but the technology that we're putting into it is a whole different ballgame, and we need help around finding the right engineering research facility, and we don't know where to begin to look.
Yeah, so I would, think through several things. One, kind of plugging into your community and spending time investing, kind of getting the network to point you in the right direction, getting the right mentors, getting the right investors when you're ready for that step. And also plugging yourself into the ecosystem in a way so that you have bona fides, right? There's this unfortunate kind of chasm between investors and founders. Founders are the deal flow. We are the innovation that feeds this economy. However, there's this kind of prestige chasm where, folks kind of see you as a lowly founder begging for a check or begging for something, right? So when you kind of invest 6 months, a year, plugging into your ecosystem, becoming a leader in that ecosystem, so that when you come and ask for these resources, you're coming as a peer to them, that really changes the dynamic and helps you penetrate faster, right? So think about that piece. Think about what ecosystem organizations there are around you that you can plug into. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is to think of this as an iterative process. The reality is, if you're not in Silicon Valley and you don't have $20 million in funding and you can't team up immediately, this is going to be an iterative process, particularly for tech-enabled kind of solutions that require a lot of engineering and research, right? So your job is to think about, how can I tranche this out, right? I may not be able to get to $5 million ARR this year, but perhaps I can put out a prototype and put out pre-sales that show traction, that allow me to get into the accelerator, that allow me to get the funding, that help me deepen my contacts so that I can get that big venture check, and then I can team up, and then I can get the big, the big traction and milestone. So those are the two things that I would think about. I would think about really plugging in and using the people power around you. The reality is, particularly in tech-enabled product, it's a very closed system. You really have to have somebody introduce you into those rooms, right? So find those people, plug into those people, and I'm happy to kind of talk off stage and introduce you to the folks that I know that might be helpful. Sure. I like that answer.
Question?
Wait for the mic. Here we go.
Hi, just to piggyback on the inventor here, as far as just resources for contract developers, I'm not even at the funding stage yet, but just to find some companies that can actually help you with the design of the prototype of the invention. Is there like a central organization that you can go to? Because you need to be able to trust. I mean, there's, things come up online, but of course you have to be able to trust these people that they won't steal your invention. But I'm at the point where, as far as like a contract developer organizations, I think they're called, where you go to them and you say, okay, this is my idea, could you build me this prototype? Because I paid someone to do that already and I got nothing. So is there anywhere, is there a central resource for that?
Carmine,
please?
does this sound familiar? Because I said this was a win-win situation for me coming here, because I got to meet people like Carmine that are in charge of organizations that pair you up with manufacturers that help you do prototypes.
So I think all of us inventors at some point have run into that exact verbiage, because we don't know what we didn't know till we knew we didn't know. And, we spent money on what we didn't know. So I think anyone, if you ask some of any of us up here and I think you guys have noticed this, as an inventor becomes more and more successful, the things that we ran into, we want to help people not make those missteps. So I think if you ask anybody that's up here, or anybody on these panels, or some of the people here that are being successful, they'll be able to give you some people. I'm looking out in the audience and I see some people that could help you. But I would join the UIA, United Inventors Association, UIAUSA.org. And the word trust really doesn't come into where you want them to perform for you, and all of us could probably point you in the right direction. Prototype is just a start. There's so much.
Yeah. You can find the best people and they still don't deliver, okay? I'm just gonna be honest with you. You're gonna find your cadence of what works for you. The first thing I would do is kind of put in a bucket of what you're good at, and then work on the communication on what you want, right? When you can really communicate your idea to any firm, to any person that's gonna help you with a real clear set of milestones and objectives and consequences, or even payment schedules in some of these ways. Remember, consultants are paid opinions. It's the execution that actually makes the money. The trust piece sits well with me too, because I ran open innovation for a number of years at a pretty famous company in Baltimore. And one of the things there is inventors have all their heart and soul into their product. And I'm going to tell you, if you would treat it like business instead of a kid, your mindset changes. And what I mean by that is you don't have to be nice to your product. You can really force different things. When you start taking everything personally, constructive criticism, constructive feedback, change here, change there, from the manufacturing side or the contractor side or the designer side, they may be better at that role than you are. And listening to that feedback and then coming up with all these inputs, because you're going to get overwhelmed with inputs, when you can come up with the better output of that kind of carousel is where I see the more effective inventors. Along with people always want to have me sign an NDA. And I just told a guy yesterday, I'm not signing it. I don't need to sign it. I don't really want to sign it because they can kind of hold me liable if I ever want to invent something like this. But what I would say is try to find somebody who has case study experience where you can see products they've already made and so forth. And sometimes paying the most money for some things actually is the value piece. Look at the credibility of that firm too. Working with overseas manufacturing is a black hole. It takes a minute to figure that out. I can tell you boots on the ground is much more effective than trying to email them to death.
I'll add to that, just more concretely, go to Crunchbase, right? You've got real kind of resources right there on the internet. Crunchbase is one of them. LinkedIn is another. The two of those together are magic. Go to the companies that are making something in your field. It doesn't have to be your exact product, but something similar. Go to Crunchbase, find out kind of information about their company, what their trajectory has looked like. Reach out to them, figure out who that founder is, reach out to them directly on LinkedIn. I'm going to say at least a third of the time, people respond. And ask them, who did you go to do your early prototypes? They may not be willing to give you their current manufacturer, right? Because that current manufacturer there may be some kind of conflict of interest issues. However, they probably won't care if you use their prototyper from 10 years ago, who doesn't really hold any kind of, secret sauce or anything that is, sensitive for them. So a lot of the information is out there, and a lot of it is about corralling the people power that is readily available to you.
Prototypes are usually the biggest hurdle for product-based businesses. And so I don't know what your product is, but see if there is a support organization for that industry. So for example, mine would be the Toy Association. So then you become a member, and then you get connections with all the resources that can propose manufacturers that can do prototypes for you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
My question's for Allison. As I'm looking at
If you can wait for the microphone, please. Is it you?
We're really working Sean out here.
my question's for Allison. I'm looking at your product, Watch Your Mouth, and the only time I've ever seen a mouth guard like that is in the dentist. So my thought immediately is, oh no, that's a bad experience. So my question is, how did you turn something that people, associate with something like that from a brand perspective into something that people want to have fun with? I don't associate the dentist with fun.
Yeah, excellent question. So the inspiration was watching this movie called The Boss with Melissa McCarthy, and at the very beginning there's maybe a 15-minute skit where she's whitening her teeth with one of these. And so just ordered a bunch of them on Alibaba, and I had this flip book called Creative Cursing. It's actually amazing how many curse words you cannot say with one of these in. And what's interesting is when you see it, the first thing is oh my God, I don't want to put one of those in my mouth, or shocked or disgusting, but as soon as somebody puts one in, the barriers of that uncomfortable just break down instantly. Laughter happens. You get some of the people that are probably the most introverted laughing hysterically, and it has become a very bonding experience, which is part of the reason it's been successful. And it's great for social media, viral videos, you name it. And the clients or the customers, the end users, are the ones telling us what they want, which has created all the other products in that. So I brought down my neighbors and we beta tested it on them. And some of the older individuals is like, nope, I'm not putting that in. They refused to. But they were laughing harder than everybody else. So we're like, okay, there's something to this. And we just did a really cheap, down and dirty prototype, put on Kickstarter with a 30-day campaign. It was fully funded in 15 days. And we had to decide whether we wanted to meet the commitment by the 30-day deadline or we bail. Because sometimes social media or social platforms like that is a good way to test your product if it has the marketing appeal. And when you get that feedback, it pushes you into the decision of like, are we going to do this? And so with our game, it's a easy, low barrier of entry, and it's more of the speed of execution. So we had patent pending, and we had our trademarks put in and everything, but we had to put our product out there before the patent was approved. And so we've learned a lot of lessons. Usually, if you have a higher barrier to entry, things are a little easier for you when it comes to that, but you have to make your decision. And I'm trying to think, did I answer your question? I kind of just went down okay.
We have another question back here.
Good.
Thank you. My name is Seth. My question is really around marketing. Do any of you do affiliate marketing and engage influencers? And if so, what's some advice that you have? If you don't, then what has been the most effective marketing strategy for your product?
I can go. Go ahead.
So we just started affiliate marketing, but let's just focus on the influencer piece for a second. Tough is what I'm going to tell you, because you'll have like maybe a half a dozen micro influencers that are considered influencers, but maybe only one's performing. So I would kind of treat it like the consultant bucket again. If it's not performing, just cut it. The other thing I'd look at too is influencers outside of their own influencing, like special moments where you can kind of like tag on not just their influencing, but maybe there's a baseball game or whatever it may be, and it kind of like adds to that acceleration. Try to get as many things at one kind of drop in some ways. That way you can have multiple channels that are actually working for you. But navigating through the influencer space, there's a plenty of apps out there or small websites that you can search through and see what they're doing. The top influencers, they require a lot more money. But sometimes I just used this example the other day. Anybody know who won the breakdancing competition in the Olympics? Right? You don't know who won the competition. It's a Canadian. I'll just go ahead and bust you out. But better yet, the Australian professor stole the Olympics, the entire Olympics, scored a 0. Like, perfect score. Now, what do we learn from that? We learn that we celebrate on failure. It's actually proven fact that when you play a game and the winning team is more excited about the other team losing versus them winning. So kind of treat it like that when you come to influencing that's how I treat it, is if they can, we've experienced this too, where you'll have like one influencer crush it for a few months, and all of a sudden they just tank. And look at the content. Well, it's not as good. They're bored, because they're influencing other stuff. Their time is being taken. The last thing I'll leave you with is influencers that influence in your space. More times I can count, we get influencers they call influencers. But it's a game show. They're not in footwear. They're not in accessories. They're not in apparel. So that would not, in the future, that doesn't work for us. But that's my take on it.
Where it does work for me. And so majority of all our marketing was social media marketing and identifying B and C influence listers that we could afford for the biggest bang for our buck. Because ours was all about outreach and exposure, more exposure, and that was the best way to spend our marketing money. So for us, that's what we did.
And these guys have covered it pretty thoroughly. I'll just add that it can be really powerful to find people who are really into your thing and really passionate about your thing. One of the big issues with influencers for us is there are tons of people who just want the product, right? They want you to send the product for free. They want the payment, right, for their time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to get people to do a thing, drive people to your website, drive sales, right? There's no influencer school where influencers learn how to be effective at their craft, right? Generally speaking, the people who tend to be most effective for your brand are the folks who are just really passionate about it. And so, one of the things that we've done is we've turned people into influencers. So we have people who are really excited about our product and maybe had a platform in a slightly different area. So I'll give you a concrete example. There's a young lady who had a makeup platform. She kind of did selling for a makeup company. But she was really excited about our products because she had a bunch of kids who had curly hair, and this saved her a lot of time with her kids, right? So we really coached her up on how to influence for us and what talking points we needed. What content would be most effective. And because she was so into our product, she did a really great job of actually getting us sales and getting us web traffic that influencers in our space weren't panning out. So find people who are really passionate about your thing.
And you don't always have to pay for them. You can give them free product. You can just find out if they just want to be tagged on your social and vice versa, partnership social. So just think outside the box. See, it doesn't always have to be monetary contributions.
And try before you buy. I think that's the biggest thing I do a lot is if you say that you can influence and sell a lot of shoes, well, let's just try it out, and then I don't have to necessarily commit to you for long term, but really trying to buy. And sometimes trying doesn't require any upfront money. I mean, if they get sales, sure we'll make an agreement and you get compensated for that. So.
And stop the bleeding quickly if it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Cash is king.
So we have one more question, then I'm going to ask everyone if they can hold their questions so the panel can get through preset questions. So one more, here we go.
I'm going to do something different. I think earlier, if you remember, I asked a myth question, right? So my middle name is Myth. I came to kind of bust a bunch of myths I came here with. I'm in the training business, learning business. So if I'm sitting where you are, sometimes it helps me when I know context. So let me kind of give it just a brief context. I'm going to be very brief. My name is Gabe Hamda. I don't have a middle name except today. My middle name would be Mr. Myth. Why do I say that? I come from a small town of Jacksonville, Florida. I have a personal mission. I want to create quality of life in a zip code of 36,000 people, 15,000 homes, low unemployment, high crime, quality of life low.
What's the question?
So the question is, I'm going to get to the question. So I came with the question like, I want to create 5% of the entrepreneurs to be inventors. So that's kind of what my personal mission. So having said that, just watching you guys, if I'm the chat GPT in the room, all of you look different to me. But there is something in common I see in you. All of you are storytellers. That's kind of a myth. Maybe, I wonder if maybe one of the intangibles of being an inventor is being a storyteller like you. I have one kind of like intangible of my own, which is mindset. Anyone interested? I brought some articles on mindset as an intangible. So I want to hear your intangibles as a, is that a myth? Or is it more engineering, design? So your opinion. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I think the number one personality trait is that they have to have grit. That is execution, follow through. When you get barriers, they push through them. They don't give up. Grit.
Well, and that's a really hard to add to that one, but she's so right. I think the other thing too is extreme focus. Like when you focus and you put your mindset to what you're trying to achieve, that's what's driven me. I always look at the kind of the glasses half full, half empty at the same time, because that's kind of what you are as an entrepreneur. Like some days are great, some days are terrible. And then being able to calm through the storm is really what you need to focus on. I was mentioning earlier, focus on the quarters, not the days, because quarter goals you can hit pretty easily. Month goals and week goals, you may just drive yourself crazy. The last one is, which I use almost daily, is extreme attention to details. In our space, one line dropped down a millimeter may be a different purchasing decision for a customer. It's because it's really focused on the design side. But if the fit doesn't fit well either, it's also a decision piece. So all those small little details is extremely important in your market set, along with understanding your customer. When you're selling to women versus to men, demographically, we don't do kids, but they're all expecting an experience of X. And if you can anticipate what the X is, you can solve Y and Z, no problem. But it does take some time to figure that out, along with, I'm going to add again, perseverance. Like, it's going to get cloudy, folks. But you keep visioning that sun's going to shine at some point, and you'll see those micro wins. Like when you see product wearing on the shelf or somebody wearing at a tournament, these are what I call the micro celebrational moments.
And I'll just add to that, I'll come at this at a slightly different angle. Yes, perseverance, grit, agree on all fronts. But here's the reality. Sometimes people have really good ideas and they're just missing some of the other key components. I say work with what you do have. If you're an engineer who has the ability to make, but you don't have the ability to fundraise or storytell and have the social component, find that person. Get people invested in the problem that you're solving and build a team around you to fill in your gaps. If you're like me, a non-technical founder in the tech-enabled hardware space, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a manufacturer. What I do have is, a legal background and the ability to go out and figure out venture, right? So I went out and got some money. With that money, you're able to bring people around you. So none of us is the complete package. I think we figure out what we do have, max that to the hilt, and then bring in people who can do the other pieces of the puzzle for you.
Very good. Sure, what kind of time we have?
We have 20 minutes.
Plenty of time. All right, we'll go through kind of just some of the questions that we went over. So we'll go quickly to Allison, with your game, and what inspired you now to be helping people? It seems like we talked about as we sell our products or as we gain momentum, we want to start helping people. What's inspiring you to do what you're doing after your game?
You want to help others have an easier path than what you've had to do. So usually there's a lack of mentors or people knowing how to receive mentors. And that is just a calling. Once you are passionate about a certain product or industry, then normally you feel the urge to give back. I think you'll find that in most entrepreneurs and inventors is that we're all very much approachable. So if you're ever curious, normally we're very giving of our knowledge and our skills, and you should never feel scared or frightened, or you feel like you are in a position where you should be asking those questions. Please go past that. Ask questions. And join organizations where you can meet more and more people to ask questions. And in my area, we're not from a big city, and so it's just easier to help people when you have a one place that most of all their questions can be asked. It just helps with communication, channeling everyone to one spot. You're not, it's the breaking down barriers to innovation. You're helping with the communication channel to give them the answers that they need and to meet the people that they want. And that was just my part of the ecosystem.
Alan?
Can you repeat the question, please?
I was like, I just want to
spacing
sell
out.
shoes.
I was trying to hear her. Allison, excuse me.
No, we were saying that as you
Yeah.
grow through your products and,
I'm just messing with you. I think the big thing that I
Shut his mic
try to
off, please.
tell folks is, even the most successful entrepreneurs that we publicize in TV all the time, they all got their start at the same start that we got our start. So when you have that first humbling experience, like somebody took a chance on us, whether it's a bigger piece of a chance or a large piece. Maybe they're an investor, for example. So we all naturally have that built into us that somebody took a chance on us, so we should pay it forward. Now, there is a handful that don't pay it forward because they're intimidated by the competition or that you may be a threat to them. Those are not the people you want to be around anyway. You want people that is going to not exactly tell you have a terrible idea, but frame it in a way where, well, it's possible that you could have a successful company doing that product. Here's some of the things that I would go towards. Here's some steps I would take. And that's kind of how I look at it. I get reached out for advice all the time, and they've even chased me down in a restaurant in the past just to pitch their product. I can tell you that is you just make yourself available, because sometimes you had to make that phone call, or I had to make that phone call to get a mentor to just talk me off the ledge in some ways, or steer me in the right direction of, I got all these decisions to make. What do you think would be a good sounding board to make those decisions? So that would be my 2 cents.
Very good. Dawn?
I would take, again, a slightly different angle. I think these 2 angles, my colleagues' angles, are great. But I also try to think about compelling mentorship, right? Rather than, there's such, again, a chasm between mentor and founder, investor and founder. And I think we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage if we are coming into the game begging for something. I say lead with value. What do you have, right? Maybe you come from a marketing background, right? Go to that law firm that has the IP experience that you need and say, hey, you guys have a lot of expertise, but your marketing sucks. How about I, lend my expertise and help you guys get a little bit more traction? And then you're not asking for anything, but you will learn necessarily from being in that space with them. So I think, we use our strengths and kind of start that exchange of value early. At the end of the day, this is about entrepreneurship. It's about revenue. It's about making money. It's about an exchange of value. That starts even here. And whatever you have a package that is valuable. And that's such an important, I think, posture to develop early on. Here's why. You will never have all the things that you need. You will, go on Shark Tank and get a deal from Mark Cuban and still come up $500,000 short for your manufacturing bill, right? But what do you have? You always have something around you that you can use to get there. And if you start that process now, when you are 10 years down the road and you are yet and still at some kind of a disadvantage, your mental mind shift is changed such that you know that there's a way to jigger this, there's a way to rig this in your favor.
Dawn, weren't you on Shark Tank? Got to deal with Mark Cuban?
I did. Yeah, that happened.
Oh. Well, let's transition into that, because I think it's a good time. It's something that we all need when we're developing or moving forward on a scale into funding, and how we should go about trying to find funding, and the black holes and different problems that people have in funding.
Yeah, so if we talk about funding generally, this is particularly right now. Venture is dry. No one is funding early stage moonshots. And so we have to be really creative. And again, this is an iterative process. I think early stage, we kind of have to use what we have. We have to bootstrap to the best of our ability. Then it may be going and doing a friends and family round. Now I see a really diverse crowd of people here, and I'm sure we have a diverse crowd on the internets. And here's the thing, different communities have a different level of comfort with funding their kids or their friends' wild idea, right? And so there are ways to hack that as well, right? Maybe it's that you throw a party and you ask people to donate $100 to come to that party to support your business. Will that get you a $50,000 friends and family round? Maybe not, but it may get you the $3,000 that you need to put up your website, get the basic pieces in place so that you can go and get funding elsewhere. So, we really have to think about hacking this funding issue, especially for diverse founders. The reality is the statistics are very clear. It's really difficult for women and minorities to get their hands on any funding, whether that be institutional or banking. So, again, it's going to be about putting together a suite of solutions that work for you. You're going to have to bootstrap. You're going to have to go to accelerators. You're going to have to apply to grants. You're going to have to do the innovation challenges, which are really prominent in this region because we've got, the U.S., we've got the government, we've got DOD, we've got so many kind of big organizations and governmental organizations here. So we have to put together a package. We can't expect to just go out, pitch 100 venture investors, and walk away with several $1 million. It's probably not going to happen for us that way. So the question again becomes, what value do we have? If you feel comfortable pitching, if you know that you're a really great public speaker, get on that pitch circuit. You can easily be taking in $5, $10, $50, sometimes $100,000. There are few pitch competitions out there that'll give you $1 million, non-dilutive, where they're not taking equity from your company, where they're not taking ownership in your company. So again, figure out what you're good at and put a package together according to that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's awesome. Alan, what about you? Have you ever had to go out and get any cash, or haven't? How do you go about it?
Well, I took 6 months to raise capital for our company. I learned a lot in that little small journey. One is know what investors actually are investing in. I think that I learned that kind of like a month into it. At the time I was investing, raising funds was right in the middle of COVID and right in the middle of SaaS. Everybody was investing heavily in SaaS companies, software as a service. And how do you compete with domestic footwear and a SaaS company? Well, you can't, because they show this growth model that is, accelerated times 100, and you're like, well, we're different. We're going to build a factory. We're going to make shoes. So that's the first thing I kind of learned is, understanding your investors, the VCs, truly what they're actually investing in. I mean, I talked to one of the early guys was like number 6 on the Facebook, founders or original employees, and he was cold and dry and not a great fit. Money's out there, even in a dry segment we have going on right now. It's really the alignment of what the investors are looking for. I found success in angel, but I just didn't want to find money. And that's what I would really encourage everybody here is, if you're after a check, just stop, because that's not what you need. Check is part of what you need. You need probably a 4-legged stool, you need 4 legs, right, to make it sit right. Well, you probably need the check. You need probably some sort of guidance along the way. You probably need somebody has some interest in what you're doing. I mean, not just handing a check, they also have a little bit of passion in that. And then third is a true vision of what you're going to achieve 5-6 years from now, because that's what investors want to hear. They want to see how much they get their money back and how fast. That's why SaaS is so attractive for people, because within a few years they see the return. The challenge with that is those same companies sometimes fail, right? And it leaves investors short in the lawsuits and so forth. The reality is focus on a few of these details to kind of put your package together. And remember, you don't know where all the undercover millionaires and billionaires are, but your friends do, or your friends of friends do. So by socializing, doing some speaking engagements is always nice, telling people your story, but also it reframes your story over and over. The more you tell that pitch, the more comfortable you are with it, and the more you add to that pitch to make it more attractive for future investors. And the last piece is, don't give up. I went 6 months and I was like, okay, I am so over talking to these guys. And yet, the one guy that ended up investing in us, it was fantastic. It was a perfect fit. So I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Allison?
I have a very different experience with financing. And our experience is more of a needle in a haystack, so I'm not sure how much of this will flow across in your experience, but our product went viral very quickly. So we didn't have a long learning curve. It was feeding from the fire hose and let's survive this. While not losing our shirts, but keep market share with competitors coming from every direction. And when you are a startup that's less than a year old, you don't own any buildings or equipment or capital, and banks don't want to lend to you. And Amazon POs mean nothing to them because technically in the fine print, they can cancel or change it 7 days before you ship. And that's just too uncertain for most financial institutions. So we were in a situation where we needed probably about $7 million of inventory in 2 months to finish our need to supply for Q4. And if you don't know, usually if you have a product that sells mainly for Christmas, 80% of your sales are in Q4. And so cash flow management is you really have to know how to produce your product, pay for it, have it shipped where it's in the hands by October for all of those big companies to sell it in Q4. So you're really having a lot of cash go out in Q3, but you're not getting the cash back until December, January, February. Anyways, I digress. But for a business like mine, how in the world do you finance that so quickly when you're not made out of money and your family's not made out of money? And all the banks are saying no. Anybody want to take a guess? So my background is in finance and accounting and manufacturing, which lend itself really well in this. We were producing quite a bit in China because they're the only ones that could meet our expedited schedule. Everyone domestically were already booked by all the big box stores and et cetera. So we went to China, and then you have to consider the shipping time. Usually you put it on a boat. It takes a month to get here. You pay by air. You're paying 3 times as much to get it here. And so we had to pay by air for like a month in order to keep the shelves stocked and the buy box active on Amazon. And so what we did is we went to our manufacturers. So normally when you work with Chinese or foreign, you pay like 25% when you place the PO, and you pay everything in full before it ships from their facility. They don't know you. They want to make sure they get paid in full because you're on the other side of the world. So we said, okay, well, if we can't produce and we can't sell, that means you're not making money either. You need to have skin in this game too. So how about if I give you 25% now when I place a PO, I'll give you another 30% when you ship, and then give me 30-day terms for the remainder. So I'm stretching the dollar. And then Amazon is one of our biggest customers at the time. And they have, normally it's like 30, 60-day payment terms. And we said, hey, you're missing out on the sales if I can't get the product to you, help us out. Because they have Launchpad program that helps with the small businesses as one of their platforms. And so we negotiated for 2 months where we got 10-day terms. As soon as we put it on a truck of theirs, we got paid in 10 days. And so I stretched it a couple more. So then I had about 30 days that I needed money, and I bit the bullet, and we did invoice factoring, the most expensive form of financing because you're paying interest on a daily basis. But for 30 days, in order to fulfill the entire need, that was well worth it. I paid about $30,000 in interest for a couple $1 million to get me through those 30 days. And we are fully funded by ourselves, and that's what we did in order to survive that Q4.
It is amazing. It really is how everything differs, every product differs, every story differs, and that's where it comes when you're an inventor or an entrepreneur. You just take the shots and you just keep rolling, you know. I want to talk really quick, and we only have a few minutes, just real quick on, are you guys going into retail, not going into retail, HSN? A lot of us inventors, we think retail or HSN, QVC is the end all. you know, and just kind of real quick, is it for you, not, and why, or is yes or no?
Yeah, really quickly, retail isn't quite right for us right now. We do really well when we're presenting the product and we get to demonstrate. So HSN and QVC are big kind of contenders for us. But quite frankly, we're doing really well D2C, so that's where our focus is right now.
We're in a similar bucket. We do DTC, and we also have a shoe truck that goes to multiple events and sets up and so forth. Not a food truck, but a shoe truck. And then we would probably rather have our own brick and mortar, to be honest with you. We do sell out of the factory too, which makes kind of a unique experience because there's a viewing window to see the product being made, which may turn into a retail setting where maybe there's some customization where you see the viewing window. And that's kind of how we would approach it. But also the margin. I think that's the other thing that we've left out on this conversation is, selling direct, you keep all the margin. It's kind of nice. You sell at Dick's, they take half. So that stings, right? Amazon's about 15% on most stuff. And then you have some especially boutique stuff that may be, a different margin. But for the most part, like when you can sell vertically through your own channels is definitely the better way to go. The downside is that you may not have all your forecastable income because you're the only one beating the drum, right? So that's the benefit of having retail is to do that. But the retail, in my opinion, is broken. It's a broken model, and it just should be a different way of approaching it. So.
The question is,
We were just talking about retail for us inventors, or retail is the end game, or HSN or QVC. Yes or no for you guys?
for us, it's brick and mortar retail and e-commerce. And honestly, as much as I believe in supporting small businesses, most of our sales come from e-commerce. So it most of the time usually plays a factor in how you sell.
Okay. Allison, Alan, and Dawn, thank you very much.